Going to war with China seems so ridiculous on so many levels, not only because of the overwhelming amount of money that passes between America and that country every second, but were it to actually occur, think of all the theme park gift shops in America who would no longer have stuffed animals, or how many pets would be poisoned with metal-filled foods made there. Wouldn't happen anymore. Of course, we may make light of the possibility. But China's out there talking war, and no one can ever underestimate a madman in charge. Our guest is a veteran investigative reporter covering international affairs, now journalist in residence at the Foundation for Defense of Democracies. Welcome Claudia Rosett to the Hardline. Claudia, thanks for being here.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Claudia, it is fascinating when we see this white paper, China's military strategy, and they say that war with the United States is inevitable. Is this just more bluster from China, or perhaps is there some reality behind it?
A lot depends on how the U.S. responds. A lot depends on what we do, because the message the U.S. has been broadcasting for too many years at this point is that if you confront us, we'll back off. Now, very recently, we didn't. We've actually stood up to China in the past few days. But on the broader world scale, the message has been that the U.S. is in retreat. And China's rulers, as they like to say at the State Department, have a choice to make. And the choice that they're going to make, and that this white paper suggests, is if they don't see that there's a line they don't dare cross, they'll keep coming. They'll cross it. They're looking to expand. They like power. They're sort of seizing the opportunity in ways not so different in some sense from what Russia has been doing.
Would it perhaps maybe be more intelligent for the Chinese to launch an economic war against the United States? Again, I mentioned all the money that passes between the two countries here. Certainly there's a lot of debt sitting there, and maybe that would be faster and cost a lot fewer lives.
No, it's a tough one, because where do they put it? I mean, the problem with economic war is the only way you really launch an economic war is you refuse to trade with somebody. And for China, that shoots themselves, not just in the foot, but in places more vital. Actually, the trade is probably one of the best chances of things heading in a good direction. The problem here is that China sees on a military front, the U.S. Navy is shrinking. Our ability to project force is shrinking. Our ability to stand up even to outfits like ISIS in the Middle East is not stopping them. And China's reading into that a message. Now economic warfare, perhaps, they have the problem that, if somebody owes you enough money, in some sense you're his partner. They'd have to make a decision to take a considerable hit themselves if that's the route they choose. What we're actually seeing is they're expanding their military and their claims.
Well, a lot of this is over this sovereign land they're making out of sandcastles, basically, in the Spratly Islands. And I think if I'm looking at it now, there's some 2,000 acres of land they've created and 5 coral outcroppings here. Is this worth going to war over these stretches of land, because they are in seas where you have other countries like Vietnam, Brunei, Taiwan, Malaysia, Philippines? They all have their own territorial demands.
Yes, it's absolutely worth stopping China there. It's better to have a confrontation at this stage over things like that than it is to end up in an all-out, massive, hot war with China.
What can we really do, though? I mean, I guess that's the point. What can we really do if China sees us as being almost fops, if you will, on the international scene, and they almost believe that we can't do anything about it? What can we do? A blockade, maybe?
Well, one of the things that we have to do in the broader picture is U.S. has got to, it really is vital at this point. I don't see it in the cards, but you can still say, here's what should be done, has got to reverse the message that we're sending. The message from the U.S. has to be, you don't mess with us. We actually are still the world's policemen. It works better for a lot of people that way. And that's not the message being sent. That's a big reason why China thinks that it can push the line and push the line. By increments, it is saying, you can't stop us. The thing is, when you set the stage, when the U.S. loses credibility when it says you may not cross this line, and our red lines have not been terribly serious under President Obama, then it's very costly to reestablish that. That's what we actually are now faced with having to do. It's not a good thing to have to play chicken with China, but unless we do it and don't flinch now, we may pay a much higher cost later.
15 seconds. Is it fair to say that the Chinese know that Barack Obama doesn't have the stomach for being tough?
They would have a lot of reasons by now to believe that, unfortunately.
It certainly looks like it because the president has sent far too many messages to them right now, and the Chinese, as you indicated, a little bit here and a little bit there. And you've got to stop them sooner or later, and we just don't seem to have the stomach to do it. Claudia Rosett, fascinating look at what's going on here in the China Sea. I look forward to talking to you again. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
My pleasure. Take care. Coming up next, a woman living in fear after making a fool of ISIS. She puts her life on the line and talks to us. This is the fastest 60 minutes in news. This is The Hardline.